I thought I'd do a video about the old UK Action Force toys and a bit of a comparison between them and some of the G.I. Joe versions. Now, Action Force was a toy line in the UK which kind of followed G.I. Joe, whereas G.I. Joe started with a kind of Barbie doll size figure, and then they started doing the three and three quarter size figures. The same thing kind of happened with Action Man becoming Action Force in the UK, but the Action Force figures were not as higher quality as the G.I. Joe ones. They were cheaper plastic and had less articulation. But rather than trying to market a new toy line, i.e. G.I. Joe in the UK, when they brought the G.I. Joe toys to the UK, they marketed them as Action Force so that they could join an already existing toy brand in the UK, an already established toy brand. Now, to start off with, it was just the vehicles and a few figures that were repainted, and the main figures were still the UK original Action Force figures. Like this is Baron Ironblood, who was the leader of the Red Shadows, which was the bad guys in Action Force. And as you can see, he's only got very basic articulation, and it's a kind of a soft, rubbery plastic they're made of, you know, quite cheap. But I like the Red Shadows themselves as a group. I think that I'd like to see them introduced to modern G.I. Joe stories as another terrorist organisation, a different group. I think they have been used in modern comics, but not really the same as they were. And these are the Red Shadow kind of stormtroopers. I don't know how in focus they are because they're quite shiny. Once again, you can see there's limited articulation. And then you've got the Black Major, who's another sort of the second in command, and they had various other kind of mutant creatures that they had working for them. But figures aside, the vehicles they had were recoloured versions of G.I. Joe toys. And the most recognisable one, of course, will be the Hiss tank, which was originally released in the UK as a Hyena tank for the Red Shadows. And as you can see, it's moulded in a different colour to the original Hiss tanks, which were black. It's got different stickers on it. Hyena. So quite a bit different to the Hiss tank. Different sticker details inside even, I think. And I don't think these are particularly sought after or collectible toys, but I like them, being as obviously I grew up in the UK. It's nice to have some UK originals, kind of G.I. Joe Action Force toys. I'll just bring in a Hiss tank so that I can compare the two there next to each other. I prefer the Hiss tank. I think black suits them better, but still, as I say, I do like the Red Shadows as an alternate enemy for G.I. Joe to battle. But anyway, as the years went on, eventually the Red Shadows were phased out completely, and all the old style Action Force figures were phased out, and we basically just had the G.I. Joe toys, but with Action Force written on the box instead of G.I. Joe. So we no longer had the Red Shadows, we had Cobra. But even though we were getting the G.I. Joe figures and vehicles properly now, they were still slightly changed. I mean, this is the UK Stinger, which doesn't look too different at first glance, but it does have different stickers for some reason, even though there really wasn't any need for it to have different stickers in the UK. It has this stripe down here, which the American version didn't have. Got a different license plate on the front. I painted that there. I mean, that was just moulded black. But once again, I think it's just quite an interesting variant for the UK to have. And the UK Vamp was actually released as the Panther. And this is quite a bit different from the American version, because the American version was green, which I do prefer, because I like all my G.I. Joe vehicles to be green and all my Cobra vehicles to be black. I just think it's a bit of uniformity to it. But in the UK, this was released as part of the Action Force. They had the Z Force and the SAS Force and whatnot, and this was obviously part of the SAS Force. and as well as the different stickers, obviously it's cast in black rather than green. It had quite a bit of yellow on it for some reason as well. This front bar here was yellow, and the gun was yellow, and the steering wheel, this bit at the back here for the petrol cans. The petrol cans themselves were yellow, but I never had the petrol cans for this. This is a Vamp petrol can, but I painted those black because yellow just never made sense for me as a military vehicle. But once again, an interesting variant for the UK that I don't think ever saw release in America. And another Action Force version of a G.I. Joe thing I have here is the Outpost Defender, which has been released at least twice in America. I think it was re-released as part of the movie line a couple of years ago with kind of yellower sandbags. The American release of this, I think, had lighter green sandbags, or possibly darker green. Actually, I think it was darker green sandbags. And this one has the slightly lighter green sandbags. And also, obviously, in C, rather than G.I. Joe, it's got Action Force instead, and it's pretty much the same thing, just with some different stickers. But I think for any UK collectors of G.I. Joe who grew up with these, this is quite an interesting and quite a nice addition to anyone's collection. I think this was released in America as a G.I. Joe weapon rather than a Cobra one. I'm not sure if this was the Shadow track. I'm not sure if this was ever released in America or not. I'd imagine it was, and this isn't complete either. This is just one I found at a car boot sale for about £1. But anyway, I just thought this video might be interesting for any, especially maybe even more so for American collectors who aren't completely aware of the old UK kind of G.I. Joe and Action Force toys and haven't seen these before, and might find it interesting that there are some other old variants out there from the 80s to collect. And I think some Red Shadow figures, there have been a few more modern Red Shadow figures released as convention exclusives, and it was in one storyline in the comics, but it's never been fully reintroduced, and it is something that I'd like to see one day. Maybe if there's ever another G.I. Joe UK comic again with the new movie coming out. I doubt it, because I don't think the last one was very successful in the UK, but you never know. Anyway, hopefully someone will have found this video interesting. That's all for me for now.